We wish you a Merry Christmas, we wish.
Santorum sponsored one of his constituents for a Congressional Angels in Adoption Award from the Congressional Coalition on Adoption Institute. It was a man who had established a nonprofit group to serve foster children and kids in crisis. The man was, like Santorum, an alumnus of Penn State University. Its philosophy is simple, read the citation of the organization. It is easier to develop a child than to rehabilitate an adult. How prophetic. The Santorum-sponsored award was given to Jerry Sandusky, the then recently retired defensive coordinator at Penn State University, who it turned out had by that time already been accused of at least 5 cases of child molestation and at least 1 of child rape. The alleged rape by Sandusky, which has been the turning point in the filing of 40 charges against Sandusky and the arrests of Penn State's athletic director and vice president and the dismissal of Penn State's president and its football coach, that took place on March 1st, 2002. Sandusky received the award for his work with children on September 24th, 2002. Former Senator Rick Santorum, the sponsor of that award, today's worst person.
You have also spoken out about the issue of religion in politics, and earlier in the campaign you talked about John F. Kennedy's famous speech to the Baptist ministers in Houston back in 1960. Here's what you had to say.
Very late in my political career, I had the opportunity to read the speech, and I almost threw up. You should read the speech.
That speech has been read, as you know, by millions of Americans. Its themes were echoed in part by Mitt Romney in the last campaign. Why did it make you throw up?
Because the first substantive line in the speech says, I believe in America where the separation of church and state is absolute. I don't believe in an America where the separation of church and state is absolute.
Make you want to throw up?
You bet that makes you throw up. Kennedy, for the first time, articulated a vision saying, no, faith is not allowed in the public square. I will keep it separate. Go on and read the speech. I will have nothing to do with faith. I won't consult with people of faith. It was an absolutist doctrine that was foreign at the time of 1960. To say that people of faith have no role in the public square, you bet that makes you throw up.
Rick Santorum says John F. Kennedy makes him want to throw up. Of course, Santorum can't run against reality, so he's lying about Kennedy's speech. Here's what JFK actually said.
referring to a speech that then Senator Kennedy gave to ministers in Houston during the 1960 campaign, addressing his Catholic faith. From September 12, 1960, here is that speech in its entirety.
I'm grateful for your generous invitation to state my views. While the so-called religious issue is necessarily and properly the chief topic here tonight, I want to emphasize from the outset that I believe that we have far more critical issues in the 1960 campaign. The spread of communist influence until it now festers only 90 miles from the coast of Florida, the humiliating treatment of our president and vice president by those who no longer respect our power, the hungry children I saw in West Virginia, the old people who cannot pay their doctor's bills, the families forced to give up their farms, an America with too many slums, with too few schools, and too late to the moon and outer space. These are the real issues which should decide this campaign. And they are not religious issues. For war and hunger and ignorance and despair, no religious barrier. But because I am a Catholic, and no Catholic has ever been elected president, the real issues in this campaign have been obscured, perhaps deliberately, in some quarters less responsible than this. So it is apparently necessary for me to state once again, not what kind of church I believe in, for that should be important only to me, but what kind of America I believe in. I believe in an America where the separation of church and state is absolute.
I almost threw up.
Where no Catholic prelate would tell the president, should he be Catholic, how to act.
I almost threw up.
And no Protestant minister would tell his parishioners for whom to vote.
I almost threw up.
Where no church or church school is granted any public funds or political preference.
I almost threw up.
And where no man is denied public office merely because his religion differs from the president who might appoint him or the people who might elect him.
I almost threw up.
I believe in an America that is officially neither Catholic, Protestant, nor Jewish.
I almost threw up.
Where no public official either request or accept instructions on public policy from the Pope,
I almost threw up.
the National Council of Churches, or any other ecclesiastical source.
I almost threw up.
When no religious body seeks to impose its will, directly or indirectly, upon the general populace, or the public acts of its officials.
I almost threw up.
And where religious liberty is so indivisible that an act against one church is treated as an act against all.
I almost threw up.
For while this year it may be a Catholic against whom the finger of suspicion is pointed, in other years it has been, and may someday be again, a Jew, or a Quaker, or a Unitarian, or a Baptist. It was Virginia's harassment of Baptist preachers, for example, that led to Jefferson's Statute of Religious Freedom.
I almost threw up.
Today I may be the victim, but tomorrow it may be you. Until the whole fabric of our harmonious society is ripped apart at a time of great national peril. Finally, I believe in an America where religious intolerance will someday end, where all men and all churches are treated as equals, where every man has the same right to attend or not to attend the church of his choice, where there is no Catholic vote, no anti-Catholic vote, no block voting of any kind, and where Catholics, Protestants, and Jews, at both the lay and the pastoral levels, will refrain from those attitudes of disdain and division which have so often marred their works in the past, and promote instead the American ideal of brotherhood.
I almost threw up.
That is the kind of America in which I believe.
I don't believe in an America with a separation of church and state.
And it represents the kind of presidency in which I believe.
I don't believe in an America with a separation of church and state.
A great office that must be neither humbled by making it the instrument of any religious group, nor tarnished by arbitrarily withholding its occupancy from the members of any one religious group.
I almost threw up.
I believe in a president whose views on religion are his own private affair, neither imposed upon him by the nation, nor imposed by the nation upon him as a condition to holding that office.
I don't believe in an America with a separation of church and state.
I would not look with favor upon a president working to subvert the First Amendment guarantees of religious liberty, nor would our system of checks and balances permit him to do so.
I don't believe in an America with a separation of church and state.
And neither do I look with favor upon those who would work to subvert Article 6 of the Constitution.
I almost threw up.
By requiring a religious test, even by indirection. For if they disagree with that safeguard, they should be openly working to repeal it.
I don't believe in an America with a separation of church and state.
I want a chief executive whose public acts are responsible to all and obligated to none, who can attend any ceremony, service, or dinner his office may appropriately require him to fulfill, and whose fulfillment of his presidential office is not limited or conditioned by any religious oath, ritual, or obligation.
I almost threw up.
This is the kind of America I believe in.
I don't believe in an America with a separation of church and state.
And this is the kind of America I fought for in the South Pacific, and the kind my brother died for in Europe.
I don't believe in an America with a separation of church and state.
No one suggested then that we might have a divided loyalty, that we did not believe in liberty, or that we belonged to a disloyal group that threatened, I quote, the freedom for which our forefathers died.
I don't believe in an America with a separation of church and state.
And in fact, this is the kind of America for which our forefathers did die.
I don't believe in an America with a separation of church and state.
When they fled here to escape religious test oaths that denied office to members of less favored churches, when they fought for the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Virginia Statute of Religious Freedom.
I don't believe in an America with a separation of church and state.
And when they fought at the shrine I visited today, the Alamo. For side by side with Bowie and Crockett, died Fuentes and McCafferty and Bailey and Bedillo and Carey, but no one knows whether they were Catholic or not, for there was no religious test there.
I don't believe in an America with a separation of church and state.
I ask you tonight to follow in that tradition, to judge me on the basis of 14 years in the Congress, on my declared stand against an ambassador to the Vatican.
I almost threw up.
Against unconstitutional aid to parochial schools.
I almost threw up.
And against any boycott of the public schools, which I attended myself.
I almost threw up.
And instead of doing this, do not judge me on the basis of these pamphlets and publications. We have all seen the carefully select quotations out of context from the statements of Catholic Church leaders, usually in other countries, frequently in other centuries, and rarely relevant to any situation here.
I almost threw up.
I don't believe in an America with a separation of church and state.
And always omitting, of course, the statement of the American bishops in 1948, which strongly endorsed church-state separation.
I almost threw up.
And which more nearly reflects the views of almost every American Catholic.
I almost threw up.
I don't believe in an America with a separation of church and state.
I do not consider these other quotations binding upon my public acts. Why should you? But let me say, with respect to other countries, that I am wholly opposed to the state being used by any religious group, Catholic or Protestant, to compel, prohibit, or prosecute the free exercise of any other religion.
I almost threw up.
I don't believe in an America with a separation of church and state.
And that goes for any persecution at any time by anyone in any country.
I almost threw up.
I don't believe in an America with a separation of church and state.
And I hope that you and I condemn with equal fervor those nations which deny their presidency to Protestants and those which deny it to Catholics. And rather than cite the misdeeds of those who differ, I would also cite the record of the Catholic Church in such nations as France and Ireland, and the independence of such statesmen as de Gaulle and Adenauer. But lest
Let me stress again that these are my views. For contrary to common newspaper usage, I am not the Catholic candidate for president. I am the Democratic Party's candidate for president, who happens also to be a Catholic. I do not speak for my church on public matters, and the church does not speak for me. Whatever issue may come before me as president, if I should be elected, on birth control, divorce, censorship, gambling, or any other subject, I will make my decision in accordance with these views, in accordance with what my conscience tells me to be in the national interest, and without regard to outside religious pressure or dictates.
I almost threw up.
I don't believe in an America with a separation of church and state, and no power or threat of punishment could cause me to decide otherwise.
I almost threw up.
But if the time should ever come, and I do not concede any conflict to be remotely possible, when my office would require me to either violate my conscience or violate the national interest, then I would resign the office, and I hope any other conscientious public servant would do likewise.
I almost threw up.
But I do not intend to apologize for these views to my critics of either Catholic or Protestant faith. Nor do I intend to disavow either my views or my church in order to win this election. If I should lose on the real issues, I shall return to my seat in the Senate, satisfied that I tried my best and was fairly judged. But if this election is decided on the basis that 40 million Americans lost their chance of being president on the day they were baptized, then it is the whole nation that will be the loser in the eyes of Catholics and non-Catholics around the world, in the eyes of history, and in the eyes of our own people. But if, on the other hand, I should win this election, then I shall devote every effort of mind and spirit to fulfilling the oath of the presidency. You bet that makes you throw up. I don't believe in an America with a separation of church and state.
At no time did Kennedy say his faith is not allowed in the public square. He gave the speech for much the same reason Barack Obama had to explain his connection to Reverend Jeremiah Wright. Kennedy had to reassure America that he wasn't going to force Catholicism on the country. He spoke about the separation of church and state. He did not denounce faith. In fact, Kennedy defended the rights of Catholics, like Rick Santorum's run for president. By saying JFK's speech on religion made him want to throw up, Santorum is confirming he would allow his faith to determine policy in the White House if he were to ever get there. I guess you could call it a theocracy.
You bet that makes you throw up. I don't believe in an America with a separation of church and state. I don't believe in an America. I don't believe in an America. I don't believe in an America. I don't believe in an America.